I'm going to be working with Castor in his new pasture. We're going to do some leading and some desensitizing. So I've really switched more to positive reinforcement. I'm going to do some of both here, but I've really started to understand at this point in time that the negative reinforcement is just not going to work for him or either the Mustang. So I've got to come up with something else. So the previous video was me working with him with negative reinforcement in the round pen, and you can tell the difference in his body language versus now. So I've gotten just a bag of hay. So I got this idea from Mustang Camp. I'm not sure the actual person's name, but she has like a Facebook page and a YouTube page. So I just got like a bag from Walmart where you take to the beach, and I put some hay in it. So he, for whatever reason, decided to leave. That's fine. I'm just going to ask him to come back. So he does have some knowledge of what the whips mean with negative reinforcement from the round pen that you saw in the previous video. So he is coming forward, and I'm adding in this positive reinforcement. So he just has some Timothy grass hay in there, and he stays nice and relaxed for it, and he seems to work decently for it at this point, and he's leading quite nicely. So just the change in him from the last video to this one is pretty crazy. So, and really he could leave and go eat grass at any point. And uh, Atlas has more of a tendency to do that versus Castor. Castor really wants to stay a lot more connected. He's a lot more interested and curious, so that's just kind of that's just his personality. So your horse might not be nearly as interested in as Castor is in me with all this grass, but this is what's working for him at the moment. So it's just the Timothy grass hay in there. So, and I'm just having him touch my hand and follow me. So I'm rewarding him for following. There I stopped. I had him target my hand, and then I clicked and fed him. So this is working fairly well compared to the negative reinforcement. But I am in his pasture, and so he's a little bit, some of the videos where I'm kind of far away. So, um, but it was a pretty good video. So I held my hand out, just have him follow. And so, like, I think when I was working on the sticks over the winter in here, he did some targeting on my hand, so he gets that pretty well. This is where I really start working on it a lot more, is him following me. So I'm just holding my hand out and then he comes and follows me. This is really nice. I probably could have clicked for any of those steps in there. With him, I ended up doing more in the beginning than I probably should have, and I got lucky with him, and he just kept giving me behaviors because of his personality. Another horse definitely is going to need more steps, more thin slices, more broken down lessons because they might not be so keen to follow you. They might want to be eating the grass. They might need a much higher rate of reinforcement. Like Castor's is very low, so at this point, but that's just what I ended up with at the time because this whole Mustang thing is a big experiment. So, but he's doing quite well. I like the distance. I like his stop. That was excellent. I should have just rewarded that stop because that was perfect. I think I was looking for some backup, but then didn't reward for it. Not sure why, but I liked his stop. The stop looked good. He got a little worried when I got closer to him, so I think distance is best at this point. I like this distance. This looks good. And really, I'm still working on trusting him. I don't know he's going to do. I want to make sure that we're both staying safe. So, and you'll see later on I do a lot of protective contact, not because he's dangerous, because it's just much easier and safer for both of us. So let him. He seemed to handle the whips quite well as well with the negative reinforcement. And that's why I kept that negative reinforcement session with him in the round pen in, even though I don't do that anymore, because he did habituate to the whips fairly well. Atlas did not. It was the complete opposite. Castor's just kind of okay. He let me touch him. He lets me touch him all over with the whips, and I didn't really do anything. That was just his personality. There was not very little training there. Atlas is on the other hand. He was much more afraid. It was a lot more desensitizing, a lot more training for him to accept the same amount of touch. So personality definitely plays a huge role in that. But he's letting me rub all down his legs, inside and outside, front and back, like front and hind, and he actually enjoys this face rubbing. So I try to give him a little scratch with it, but he's just a cool guy. Like he's a cool horse. So his personality is definitely helping him. Atlas is not. Atlas is the sweet horse, but he takes a lot of trust and time, and he's just very skeptical and he's not curious. He's just afraid. So it's just interesting. But it's cool because they're like night and day. So it gave me a lot of different things to work on here. He just wants to scratch his face, which is great. Like I'm not gonna punish that. He's interacting with me. He's not afraid. He's not being mean or pushy or anything. So I really like all of this. So I'm gonna give him a nice scratch. He's participating well, and he's letting me pet him. So that looks really, really good. I really like that because he was even now sometimes he'll not be a friend a fan of face petting. He's got to kind of be in the mood. Like sometimes he'll be like no, and he'll just move and leave, and sometimes he'll stay there and let you pet him. So I just want to reward him for that, especially in the beginning because he was really skeptical about his forehead and me touching his ears. So, but he looks great. Lets me touch all down his hind legs. He's a little sensitive back there and then on his belly, but he works through it really well. So. But again, I didn't do a ton of rewarding there, so definitely you're gonna have to do more rewarding like I did in Atlas's videos, a lot more breaking down. And then I just have both sticks out to the side to kind of draw him toward me, and he did do this in the round pen a little bit, so he does remember that, but I'm just adding in the positive reinforcement. So you have to be really careful here too, because if you're gonna use some pressure, even if it's not a lot, like he could just leave town and be at the other pasture because I'm in his pasture. So but at this time, it was much easier just me go in and work with him versus me move him to the other place because he's not halter. Well, he's kind of held halter broke, but he's quite green, so I didn't really want to chance messing that up. I wanted to build on other behaviors, so that's why we're in here. But I do like using the two whips. I don't do it a lot. I usually mainly train other people's horses like that. And he gets that side of the pass. He is quite good at that. And there's a little bit of me teaching that in the previous video where he's in the round pen. And I'm not sure where the part where I start actually doing the sideways toward me happens. I couldn't find that, but we did sideways away in there. We did a little bit of that. But I'll have to break that down in a separate video. But yeah, he's doing quite well with that. He's doing that side pass comes in really handy later on when I do a lot of protective contact work with him. So I'll have to make a separate video for that. I had to cut that part out because I was off camera. I just went out of frame. But I'm just desensitizing him to the whips because he got a little nervous like he does here. He wants to kind of leave, which he's got nice draw though because he could just leave town at this point. But I'm just trying to get him to lead and follow me while I walk backwards and he kind of draws to me. That's what I'm working on, and then also touching him and having him kind of steer away from both of those whips. So I'm just kind of balancing all that out. So luckily he's got that draw and that curiosity, or it just would not have worked. So I think I'm asking him to side pass toward him. Nothing is happening. So really, like you pick up on one whip, that's your cue, and then you push them with the other one, and you start in front of their face. There we go. And then you kind of start stepping to the side you want to come over. So in this case, his right side, and then you reward it. That's basically how you do it. But I'll make an in-depth video on that. But um, so he really looks nice because really when I was working, because these are a little bit older videos once I voice over them. When I was working with him at the time, it felt like, oh my gosh, this is taking forever, you know. And then when I look back on the video there, that was really, really, really nice side pass toward. When I look back at the video, I'm like, oh, there was only like one video for January and like one for February, and I had like very little bit of time. Like there from September through the whole winter, there was like a few videos, so I wasn't doing very much at all. So again, side pass the other way. Yeah, there we go. So that the white whip's kind of pushing him over and blocking the forward. The black whip's the cue, and then I'm kind of just positioning my body so I can push him over with that white whip. But so when I look back at it now, I'm like, oh, he did make a lot of progress in a short amount of time. So you kind of get stuck in that. That's why it's important to kind of video and have other people watch you, give you some tips, and then you can look back on it and be like, oh my goodness, I've gone so much further than I thought. So I'm asking him to side pass away. That looks really good. And you don't want to break that, yeah, there we go. Break that threshold where he gets too worried. You could tell he was a little tense. He was picking his head and neck up. His ears are pricked toward me. He's just tight in his body. If I ask for too much with that pressure, he could just leave. So you got to be really careful and reward a lot more often because I want to ask for that movement over and then reward so he wants to stay. And it's going to be more so because he's oh, that's very pretty. That looks really good. But it's gonna be more so because he's wild. Like if you're teaching some liberty stuff to a domestic horse, it might not be so much. Um, like I have a quarter horse mare and she's like a baby, so she's 4 now, but she's like a toddler and she's just all over the place. So she probably needs a pretty high rate, even if she was just in an arena, just to stay focused. But we really gotta pay attention to our horses. So again, I'm balancing this out with some desensitizing and working on what we did before and just doing some rubbing on his neck and his face. And he's really gotten quite good with that. He's not good with anything behind the shoulder. So we haven't really done that. I want to work on everything up front first, make sure that's really solid, and then I'll work my way back. And that's where the protective contact comes into play. And you'll see that next. But he was very awesome.